Neil, thank you very much. Greetings, everyone. And thank you to FinTech Live London for the ability to speak with you today. I love this topic that we're going to talk about the competitive edge of FinTech for good. And maybe a quick note that was not mentioned in the introduction, just so we're kind of feeling each other from speaker to audience. I am an entrepreneur as well. And so for those of you in the audience who are like, I'm going to listen to a banker, so I own the bank. I own the majority control of the bank, and therefore I'm really an entrepreneur first, or a social entrepreneur more specifically, and I just happen to own a bank. And so that'll explain a little bit of the mindset of which I come at the topic today, and how passionate I am about it. And so what I do hope to do today is take you out of a little bit of your day-to-day, and you're working in your day-to-day, and have you kind of lift you up and look on your business. And so work not only on your business or your organization, but yourself as well. And so when we think about what the competitive edge is of FinTech for good, it includes both yourself and the organization that you work with. And so I would start today with a question for you as to why are you working in their business today? What is it about your FinTech or your organization that really kind of, lights your candle in terms of getting up in the morning and getting out of bed? So write down a few thoughts there, because your edge in this business and what your organization's edge is really the important. What do you think FinTech for good? What do you think that edge is? Some of your answers may be a bit more customized to your organization than what I may explain today, but I think we'll get pretty close at the end of the day. So my question to you again is, why are you working in your business? Like, are you doing it for money? Sure. Are you looking at to build something, to create something? Could be. I talk to a lot of FinTechs, and a lot of times I get an answer like, well, I'm building my resume, and then I can go to the next thing, and then I can build my resume and get to the next thing and next thing. And it's like they're searching for something. And my question is always, what are you searching for? What is that purpose? If you had to think of maybe the one thing that would motivate and fascinate you for the rest of your life, you could get up every day and you would have more energy at the end of the day than you did at the beginning of the day, what would that one thing be? And it may not be one thing, it might be a series of things. Excuse me. So I've had the opportunity to interview dozens of professionals over the course of my career. And these people are generally, I would call them in the mid 50s to maybe early 60s in their life. So they've been working for some time in a whole host of companies, large and small and so forth. But the reason that they were sitting in front of me is, sadly enough, is that they were really looking for some purpose and meaning in their life. You could almost see it in front of them that their soul was empty. They'd spent decades working in some cases, and their face was just, I don't know what my life really is worth. I don't know what I've been doing for the past 20 years, raising kids and whatever else. But the fact is that their work did not have meaning. And the fact is that money didn't fill that hole or void, if you will, in terms of what they were looking for. They seemed to be financially stable at a minimum, if not financially well off. But the fact is they were still missing a key component in their life, and they were searching for it. So let me share with you what my purpose is, and see if it resonates with you. And so my purpose in life is really around the freedom of time, money, relationships, and purpose. Let me say it again: a freedom of time, money, relationships, and purpose. I have a nickname for this. I call it my happy spirit. And so I know when I'm in the zone of those four freedoms that I feel great. And it really is, nothing can stop me at that point in time. So let me break it down a little bit. So the freedom of time. Think of it as the ability to control your schedule as to how much do you work, how much do you not work, what do you work on. That control of time is really a freedom. And so there's one other thing that I think is a misnomer in this, and people think that, oh, freedom of time, you want to go sit on a beach, and I love a beach, by the way, I'd love to surf. But the fact is that I wouldn't do my whole life doing that. So a little difference between somebody's purpose and passion in this particular case. So for example, I have a passion for exercise, ride my bike to work every day, but I don't make a living doing that. So how does your purpose relate to your work is kind of specifically what I'm looking at here today. So there's one other thing about freedom of time that I think is critically important, particularly for those listening today, and that is the ability to rejuvenate, to give your mind time to rest, to synthesize the thoughts, new ideas, to calm the noise down, if you will, in terms of what you're working on. It really allows you to come back and be more productive. So freedom of time, the ability to control your schedule, really allows your performance to improve. Let's go to freedom of money, which is really freedom of resources in a lot of respects. And in this particular case, let me dispel a misnomer right away. People are like, oh, this FinTech for good thing, I thought, it was going to be like a nonprofit talk or something of that nature. I'm living example that you can do well and do good at the same time. These are not mutually exclusive concepts at all. You might have learned in business school and university that they are, but they are not. Those are theories. And I'm proof that that is just a theory. So this ability to balance, to do good and to create a well-off financial life for yourself is absolutely a core of one of the freedoms that I want. To give you an example, the Sunrise Banks, we double about every 5 years in size. And so I've really created a self-multiplying company and our growth is accelerating. So it really isn't about limiting yourself in terms of resources. Let's go to freedom of relationships for a moment. Values alignment. I love hanging out with interesting people and different people. But generally speaking, I like hanging out with values aligned people. And that's not just in my personal life, but also in my professional life. And so the freedom of relationships also gives you and gives me the ability in which to divorce certain relationships in my life. And divorce is usually, it's a hard word. You think of a of a spouse in this situation, but think about as a bad vendor, a bad partner, a customer who just is so difficult that it just isn't worth it anymore. The freedom in which to say, we're done with this. A relationship is a two-way street of trust and communication. And sometimes that just breaks down and it isn't worth investing in that longer and longer. And so that freedom in which to work with people that are values aligned as well as companies is a great and joyful thing. The last one, freedom of purpose. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one because it really has juice to it when in my personal as well as professional life. And so when I'm in, I'll call it the zone of my purpose, I am more creative. And my purpose really is simply to do good. I like doing good. I wake up every day to think about what is the one thing I could do to help somebody or to make the world a better place. And it doesn't have to be some great, I'm not going to solve climate change in one day, but you know what? I can help somebody. I can coach somebody. I can say hello to someone. You can do things, reach out to a friend. All these things just kind of make up a context and a fabric in which I feel good about, but also builds the connectors and trust between relationships. And I know when I'm in that space, my creativity is at its best. I'm in a place of gratitude usually, and I'm defending it from all the anger and all the little nitpicky issues that I have going on every day. And I'm really thinking about bigger ideas and bigger problems to solve. And that's where I'm more productive. And if you're a CEO of a company or on a leadership team, that's where your time really needs to be spent. One other aspect of this is I find that my brain is more flexible. It's more open to ideas. It's less rigid. So if you find yourself getting really kind of edgy, it's either time to take some free time or some rejuvenation time to calm that down, or you're not in your purpose at that point in time, and maybe someone else should do that activity. Let's talk about the purpose of alignment in your company. And more specifically, you've seen this before. You see it sometimes in sport teams. So you see a colleague or a teammate that dies suddenly or suffers some tragedy, and the rest of the team begins to rally and play above their expectations because they're playing in honor or they're playing for this particular person or this cause. They exceed those expectations because, quite frankly, they're playing for something bigger than themselves. the selflessness comes in, the teamwork becomes greater, the trust between players comes greater. And as a result, they perform better, they win more. And so this is the same thing here. When your whole team is in their purpose, you see those better results. Now, when I would challenge you to do this relative to your purpose, just write it down. So after this presentation, write down, what is your purpose in life? And you can go into some quiet place, write it in a little book, put it in your notes in your iPhone or something, but give it a shot and then revisit it often, like every day. Like if you are a journal writer like I am, just write it down every day. You'll be amazed at what starts to happen as a result of this. What really you begin to see is that your purpose begins to emerge right in front of you. And so as an example, I have a saying that, once your brain knows something, like your purpose that you've written down, your eyes begin to see and your ears begin to hear what your brain is looking for. It's amazing how things start to appear that it's like, yes, that's really what I want to do. And that's not what I want to do. And you begin to take it in. All of a sudden, the possibilities of what is available to you just continue to grow and grow. And you're like, wow, there's no crazy goals I can make for myself, only crazy deadlines, right? It's only a matter of time before I can accomplish these tremendous things. And so it's a bit like, I drive a black Tesla, and I didn't know there were so many black Teslas on the road until I actually bought one. And now they seem to appear everywhere I go. And so once you have your purpose in front of you and clarified, you begin to see all these things emerge. And don't worry about getting it right. If you're 80% right, great. Get it out there and then test it against life. It's going to change and morph a little bit as time goes on, because the realities and the circumstances of life you'll be able to refine it. And it might morph slightly, but it's likely going to be 80% right all the time. So you got to be good with that. One other thing that knowing your purpose does is it begins to crack open your abundant mindset. Okay. It takes you out of scarcity. And as a result of that, you really begin to think of what's possible. So I would challenge you, if you're living in your purpose. And so for me, example, when I think about my freedom of time, money, relationships, and purpose, people ask me, Dave, when are you going to retire? When are you going to go do something else? And I'm like, why would I retire? To me, retiring is slowing down, becoming sedentary. And quite frankly, when you slow yourself down, the world and universe have a way of taking the DNA back to where it came from. And so it shortens your life to retire, is what I'm saying. When you're living your purpose, and you may take more free time in that particular, as you get older, but you might adjust your schedule to coach more people or do different things to meet your purpose. You can change your activities. But the fact is that this theory of retirement begins to fade away because you lose your audience, you lose your money and resources, and the ability to make relationships and maintain relationships. And if you look at longevity studies, yes, your genetics and your health and so forth physically make a big difference. But the fact is longevity and quality of long life really comes down to, are you keeping your brain sharp? Do you have meaningful relationships or faith in your life? These types of things keep people going and keep their quality of life high. And so living your purpose actually can have you live longer and a better and more quality life. So when you think about this in other contexts, think about it in terms of investment and costs. So a lot of the abundant thinkers that I know, they invest in themselves. They invest in themselves to go get new experiences, more education. They engage in new and interesting things. Even though that it may not return something immediately, they know that there's a return on that investment at some point in time. And it might not just be investment in themselves, it might be investment in others if they're managing people. And so it's this abundant that you're expanding and making a bigger pie. The contrary to that is a person who always thinks of costs. What do you think of costs? When you think of a cost, your brain goes into a negative space. I got to minimize the cost. I got to control it. And as a result of this, you limit your horizons as to what you can do. So think of things as investments versus costs, and open up and maximize the ability and the possibilities of your life. For those salespeople who are listening, let's talk about sales transactions versus sales transformations. And so when you think of a sales transaction, my brain goes immediately to, something that's ultimately becomes more and more depersonalized. It becomes devalued. It becomes commoditized. It's really a race to zero, right? It's all about price. And as a result of that, again, you're in a cost minimization type of world, and you begin to limit yourself and what is possible. When you think of sales transformations, you think of the ability to, I share the values with my customer. I'm immediately not selling on price. I'm selling on something higher in a bigger purpose. But it also speaks to economic cooperation that not only multiplies my side of the equation as a provider of services and products, but it also multiplies the economic resources and results of the person I'm selling it to. So there's a shared value in a sales transformation. It's a different way of thinking about it. It's an abundant way of thinking about it. So abundance and scarcity. Well, now, when we think about what does this mean relative to the performance of your company? And so overall, there's a lot of ways to think about this, but let's just take it from a macro standpoint of the purpose of your company. Do you know the purpose of your company? So think about, have you clearly articulated your vision, mission, and values of your company? This is the purpose. This is why you exist. So knowing the why, if you will, of what your company is really critical. The most important thing then is making sure that why the company exists, its purpose, is shared and followed by 100% of everybody in the company, everybody being on the same page at the same time. That is critical to moving your company forward, and particularly within a fintech and a fintech for good, when you're looking to scale a company that you want excessive growth to happen. What this does is when everybody is 100% on the same page relative to the purpose of the company moves faster. It is more agile. It is more adaptable. As circumstances happen, the trust between team members, they're focused on that higher vision and bigger purpose. They're able to adapt, but they're able to move more quickly. And that allows people to adjust and execute more quickly and outpace the competition. So one thing I want you to remember in terms of the purpose of your company, the purpose is not making money. So if that falls into your purpose, you're going to need to redo that exercise again. The making money is the result of your purpose and doing your purpose well. So the more you focus on the purpose of your organization and the stronger it is, the more money you're likely to make. And so that is the focus. Let me get into a few specifics in terms of what happens relative to another competitive edge of having a fintech for good. And it comes down to people. And there are two major things, and I'll put retaining and recruiting talent first. And so when you think about, if you're hiring people, yes, you want skill sets and certain talents that are necessary for your organization. But if you begin to hire on values and finding the people that are the right fit for your organization, that share in that purpose, the passion around it, and executing on that purpose, now you really have someone that is there for more than a paycheck. As a matter of fact, they're going to stay longer and work harder for you because they're actually earning 2 paychecks. If you remember the story of the people that I was interviewing in the void of the soul, what's happening in this particular case is people are not only receiving a financial paycheck to provide for themselves and their families, but they're also providing that emotional, that filling of the soul, if you will. It's an emotional paycheck. As a result of that, they're likely to stick with you longer and work harder as a result of that. The flip side of all of this is when you discover someone in your organization that is not values aligned. And it happens, it just does. And you might hire and make a mistake, but when you do, the fact is the ability to terminate that relationship. A person who is not values aligned in the organization and not rowing the boat in the same direction as everybody else is a distraction. It's friction. It's slowing you down. It's not allowing you in which to scale in the speed in which you really want. So as a result of that, you do need to make those tough decisions and have an adult conversation and separate at that point in time, because that values alignment is really critical. I can give you an example of this exactly from the standpoint of Sunrise. We've hired 60 people in the first 6 months of this year, and we've been able to recruit and retain, I'll say, talented people that otherwise wouldn't even look at us if it weren't for the purpose and the mission of the organization. And at the same time, we've had to separate ourselves from some of those whose values we just didn't hire right in the beginning. And so we'll see, time tells, but the fact is there's very few people in the organization today that are in a values misalignment. We just, it's never quite perfect, but the fact is the more you can do that, the faster your company moves. Let's talk about customers, new customers and prospects particularly. So when you're selling on purpose, you've really begun to differentiate yourself from your competition almost immediately, because you're not selling on price alone. Everybody has to sell on price, and you have to be competitive from a cost standpoint. I get that. But the fact is when you're selling to customers who share your values, you're selling on a much bigger and a much longer type of a relationship. You're finding also what your market niche is. The closer that niche is to values alignment, the easier the sale is, the quicker the sale is, and the longer that customer will be with you. It's just much easier. And so when you develop these customers, you're developing this relationship, is that, again, in this relationship, there's a two-way street of communication. You're really developing fans. We become fans of our customers, and I'll give you a few examples of our FinTech for Good customers, but also our customers talk about and refer customers back to us that they think are mission aligned. And so it really is a great way in which to kind of broaden the pie and expand the performance. And so a couple examples of FinTech for Good clients of ours. I'll start with Self. Self has a credit builder loan. It's a cash secured loan, helps people improve their credit history and be able to access now greater and less costly credit in the future. Last year, Self did a little over 260,000 loans for about 190 million. TrueConnect, they offer an employee-based loan, a small dollar loan with no credit check. And so somebody who has never accessed credit before, they have the ability to establish credit and now build their credit history in which to move forward. We did about 6,500 loans with them last year, about 15 million. Gusto is a payroll provider. And so the loan product with them is an early wage access. And so free to the consumer. And we did about 240,000 wage advance loans last year for about $78 million. So these companies have scale, and they're getting real and true impact because they're measuring the impact of credit building, let's say, on their customers. And so they're seeing really progress. Remitly is slightly different. Remitly is in the remittance business, of which we don't have anything to do with it as the bank partner, but we do offer a companion account, a transaction account, a bank account for their customers who are immigrants. And so we use alternative documentation. And so we're giving access to immigrants who haven't had access to the financial system before. And we have about 100,000 accounts with Remitly. And so again, significance in terms of scale relative to the bank and our relationship. Let's talk about compliance, because as a FinTech, you're going to run into your partnership with your partner bank, and compliance is going to be a big deal, and it is a big deal. And so let's talk about two particular teams, the bank as well as the FinTech, that are values aligned and they're mission aligned. Their purposes are similar, right? They want to be a hero to that same consumer or small business. In that particular space, what happens when you're working towards the same benefit of that small business or consumer? The teams have a tendency to work better together. They make faster decisions. They come up with more creative solutions because there's a greater trust element between the two teams. As a result of that, you can do different things. You can try things faster. You can figure out what works and what doesn't because of that trust and because of the mission. And ultimately, you're looking for the benefit of that consumer or small business as the end result. There's other aspect about this values alignment between the two teams and the purpose, and that is, when customers are happy, they complain less. There's fewer complaints in which to deal with. Your compliance woes kind of reduce in that particular case. So compliance, running a safe and sound program, actually reduces risk from a compliance standpoint, but also from a legal and standards and rules that you need to follow. And so purpose-driven companies that match well with their bank partner, compliance becomes less of a headache for you. All this kind of leads up to what I would call an authentic brand. And in today, there's a lot of greenwashing. There's a lot of noise around to do good and ESG and impact and sustainability. In a lot of cases, you don't know who's really doing good. And and who's really, telling you a falsehood or a greenwash. And so in this particular case, we use certifications for this, but the whole idea in your authenticity is to really walk your talk of your purpose. And when you're doing that as an organization, when you're 100% aligned, this really comes out and you differentiate yourself from your competition in terms of your brand. And for Sunrise, what that sounds like is we are a certified B Corp. And so if you're not familiar with a B Corp, you got to think of a triple bottom line of people serving people, protecting the planet, and prosperity or profitability, financial sustainability. So those are kind of the big tenets of it, but it also means transparency and governance. It's a broader kind of stakeholder view of a company. And as a result of that, we're not just competing with ourselves in this space, we're competing with other non-banks as well as banks in a score, in our B Corp score, not best in the world, but best for the world. And so it challenges us each and every year to be better and better. And Sunrise has been in the top 10% of B Corps in the best for the world competition for the last consecutive 9 years. And so this continuous improvement that has to happen around our purpose and our mission is forefront each and every year. CDFI, a community development financial institution. So what that is basically saying is that it's a certification from the US Treasury, and 60% of our loans year in and year out have to be to low and moderate income people and places. And so a high bar in which to meet each and every year. But again, it's that certification, it's the walking of the talk that says, yeah, we really do put our money where our mouth is when it comes to lending. And lastly, I would say the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. And so who you hang out with makes a difference. So if you're hanging out with entrepreneurs and social or values aligned entrepreneurs, it really does further your mindset, because there's generally a sense of cooperation and sharing of ideas. While you might be in the same industry, you may not be really direct competitors. And that's the case with the Global Alliance. And, when you put what I would loosely call a bunch of do-gooders and tree huggers from around the world together in all different business models coming from different countries and regulatory regimes, you really begin to think out of the box and see that creativity, not just for the benefit of the bank in terms of doing things different, but doing things better, and really trying new products and partnerships. Now, as I come to the end of my time here, there's a couple of resources that I want to leave you with, because I referred to them kind of loosely throughout my presentation. I have to give credit where credit is due. And one of those is Dan Sullivan. He runs The Strategic Coach. I've been a coaching client of his for about 15 years. And a lot of the tools, particularly, I think it's worth looking at if that freedom of time really resonated with you. Think about Dan talks about things in terms of free days, focus days, and buffer days, a really interesting concept. He's also got several different podcasts, really interesting guy to take a look at when you think of a purpose-driven fintech. Next is EOS Worldwide. This is the management system we work on, the entrepreneurial operating system. And so you can go to EOS Worldwide, take a look at their resources out there. The entrepreneurial operating system was really based on a book authored by Gino Wickman. It's called Traction. It's got an orange cover. In this book, you're going to find things that are, you know them, but they're practical guides to executing on your vision and mission. And if that doesn't work, reach out to me. Happy to give you more resources. And with that, Neil, I'll yield my time if there's anything left.
Oh, we've got a couple of moments left, David. Thank you very much. Fascinating presentation. And a couple of bits I do want to pick up on very quickly before we wrap things up for now. First of all, you were referring a lot to sort of the socially conscious aspect of financial services, of banking, which do you feel that's something that's going to be growing further? Because there seems to be a lot out there that people might not be particularly familiar with.
Yeah, the movement around both the social as well as environmental impact, particularly in regards to financial services, and I'll focus on banking, that movement is growing significantly. We see that not only in the US, but we see it globally within the Global Alliance for Banking on Values in terms of banks and financial institutions of all different shapes and sizes, including FinTech, that are focusing on more of the social impact. And when you think about comments like BlackRock, the largest investment company in the world, and Larry Fink says we're only going to invest in companies that have some social or environmental or sustainable purpose, that really begins to turn some heads in terms of where the movement is for both social and environmental impact and how to measure it.
So it's very much sort of feeling the way the currents are going. We're heading in that direction. Moving on to another thing you mentioned, a lot of that's about purpose. Would you connect the purpose that you have as a professional within these sort of industries with the trust that you're developing with consumers? Do you think if the two of those can connect, you can generate more trust when people really understand the purpose of an organization?
You sure do. And you not only develop a deeper sense of trust, but you develop it more quickly and in avenues you may not think about. And so, for example, one of the things that probably has built not only a trust within clients that we have, yes, you have to deliver quality products that are easily accessible, convenient, transparent, etc. But if you have an opportunity to volunteer with your clients or with your staff, this is how trust really begins to build. When there's activities and you can do volunteering and you can host different events online or digitally in which to connect people with their values and really be able to show that you understand your clients and poll them and really engage in a dialogue as a result of this. And so the values alignment is really the basis in which to be creative in terms to how to create and expand the trust that's created between, let's say, bank or fintech and client ultimately.
Okay, David, that's fascinating. Thank you so much for your time today. We are going to have to wrap things up there for now. Again, thank you, David, for joining us here today on the FinTech Live virtual stage.
Thanks, Neil.